Welcome, everybody. Uh, Today's webinar is the following. Is your WOW toolbox strong enough? Life-altering sales innovation in 30 minutes. So get ready. And it's going to draw on material in my forthcoming book, Innovate Now, 6 Sales Innovation Techniques, which is coming out in March. So what does a WOW toolbox look like? It's selling tools you use to impact strongly your prospect. So you'll have strong visual metaphor, bold vision statements, hard-hitting testimonials, examples of your work, great diagnostic questions, and risk mitigation techniques. These are some of the things that are in your WOW toolbox. This is the WOW toolbox, by the way, for an architect. Why do we need strong visuals? I think about 50% of our brain is devoted to visual, 50% of our brain. And 90% of the information sent to the brain is visual. 93% of human communication is visual. So are we doing a good job with our visuals? Yeah. When you have pages like online, you get 94% more page views on average when you have visuals. Here's a strong one. The brain processes images 60,000 times faster than text. I've seen the number as low as 10,000 times, but it's a pretty big number. So the question is, do you have a strong WOW toolbox to move the selling process forward? A strong WOW toolbox helps you open conversations with bold vision, using strong visual metaphor, overcome skepticism and risk aversion, and earn the right to strong PIKs, payments in kind. So the payment in kind is what the prospect does, so you know it's a real opportunity. I mean, here are some examples. If the prospect fills out a credit application, if they visit your facility, if they check a reference, if they invite you to meet a colleague or the CEO, this is a huge PIK, payment in kind, because the prospect's putting political capital at risk. So this is how we measure the seriousness of an opportunity. Now, wows. Now, a wow is either like the prospect says wow, or a word like wow, that's amazing, that's fantastic. Or there could be a visual concomitant. The prospect, opens their eyes, they lean forward. Those are visual wows. Now, wows are important to track the progress of a selling process, particularly when it's not a one-call close. And they're two-edged swords. The first side of the sword is, if you're not getting any wows in your sales presentation, you probably need to amp it up. And today is about techniques to amp it up. But the other side of the two-edged sword is, if you get a wow, what did you do with it? What did you harvest? What was the PIK, for instance, that you got? Why do we need PIKs? We need PIKs, payments in kind, to defeat the buyer's scam, to not get trapped by the buyer. So what is the buyer scam? When a prospect invites us in and there's a good indication they're happy with the incumbent, there's a small chance that we're going to close at the outset. They're usually bringing us in for a price check to see if they're buying well. Now, if a prospect said to you, listen, there's no chance we're ever going to do business together. You're just a price check. But would you mind spending 10, 20 hours on a presentation, right? So that I could take your proposal and beat the living hell out of the incumbent. Well, nobody's going to play ball with you on that. They're not going to do the work. So they do what we call the buyer scam. And what is the buyer scam? They say, listen, I know you've wanted my business. You've been calling on me for years, and I haven't been responsive to you because Joe or Jane, they're my great supplier. I go to them. They're my go-to person. But in the last 6 months, something has gone wrong. There are unexplained charges on invoices. The service is not what it used to be. And the salesperson is not getting back to me. They're not responsive the way they used to be. And I've heard great things about you. I think this is your year. Can I invite you to come in and, do a proposal for me? And you like the way that sounds, don't you? So you do the proposal, and they take the proposal and they beat the living hell out of the incumbent. That's the parole officer scam. That's the buyer scam. And we need PIKs to make sure that it's not a scam, because if the prospect starts doing meaningful work, like they'll introduce you to the CEO if they're not the CEO, they'll check references, they'll visit your facility, that means that it's probably more serious. So we need to earn the right to the PIK. One big idea for today is no prospect door should remain closed to you. If you want to call on a prospect, if you've targeted a prospect, that they should be talking to you. Now, why is this an important issue? Why bother? Life is good, business is strong. Take a quick look at recent recessions, almost every 10 years. When do you expect the next one? And what's your anti-recession plan that you have in place right now? This is an illustration of what's called the yield curve. It shows the long-term Treasury bond rate versus the short-term borrowing rate, Treasury notes. And when it's inverted the way it is right now, this is usually a precursor to a recession. So life may be good right now, but a recession is just around the corner. And what percentage of your prospects are in search mode? When I go around the room with a group of sales team members or even business owners, I presented to two groups of business owners last week. You go, if you say to them, if you talk to 100 different prospects, what percentage of them are in search mode if you reach out to them, if you get them on the phone? 5%, 10%, 20%. Occasionally we'll get a 30%. But most people are not in search mode. They're good. So according to a marketing metrics study, 60 to 70% chance of closing an existing customer, but only 5 to 20% chance of closing a new prospect. More likely, if they're speaking to you, they're running the buyer scam. They're doing a price check. So let's take a look now at skepticism and risk aversion and how we might ultimately use the WOW toolbox to fight them. Now, we all know that bad decisions make great stories. So here's one of those that I wish was not one of my decisions, but it did lead in the end to a great story, right? So it's a classic. We all know that you should never buy a sunny day used car. And so this is the story of the mistake I made. Maybe you made a mistake like this or part of this at some time in your life. It's a long time ago. I got $900. You got $900 in your pocket, and you come up to a car lot, and there it is. It's on the lot. It's a 1969 VW Square back. It's got a hand crank moonroof, 4 doors, 25 miles per gallon, only 30,000 miles on the odometer. It's a cream puff. It's a beauty. So you walk onto the car lot, and it's a sunny day. It's a warm, sunny day. And you're feeling warm. And it's not just because the sun is beating down on your shoulder. It's like 90 degrees out. But beyond that, it's a big decision for you. It's all the money you have. But you go in, you explore the car. It's a beauty. You drive it, you test drive it, and you decide to buy it and you drive it off the lot. It was a beautiful sunny day. Now it's a few months later. It's the fall. It's a rainy, nasty, windy, cold day. You're driving your car. The rain is coming down. It's pounding like cats and dogs. It's raining outside the car. And as you've probably guessed by now, it's raining inside the car. Well, yep, if you were like me, you made the mistake of buying a sunny day used car. You see, there was rust, there was perforations, sheet metal perforations. It's about 3 inches of water in the driver's well. You're wet, you're cold, the heat doesn't work in the car. How do you feel? You feel stupid. Well, maybe you weren't as dumb as I was. I bought a sunny day used car. But here's a secret for you. Every buyer with whom you deal has bought their version of a sunny day used car, and they're skeptical. And therefore, They tend to disbelieve what you say. And the question is, what do you do about it? What do you got in your WOW toolbox to deal with it? And then, of course, there's risk aversion, which is slightly different. It's a statistical idea that we tend to avoid the risky opportunity. Now, this material comes from a book called Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman, who won the Nobel Prize in economics. And he did a thought experiment. We're going to do the same thought experiment right now. He did a thought experiment which explains why one in the hand is worth two in the bush. So, you ready for a thought experiment? I'm going to give you an opportunity. You got a choice. What would you rather have? $5,000 sure thing, or we flip a coin. Heads, you get 10,000. Tails, you get nothing. What would you rather have? If you're like most people, you'd rather have the $5,000 sure thing. That's risk aversion. Well, what if we change this? What if we make it $4,000 sure thing? I give you $4,000, or we flip a coin. Heads, you get 10,000. Tails, you get zero. You might be surprised to learn that most people still go for the sure thing. Then you might ask, well, how low does it go? It goes down to, it goes down to as little as $2,500. Kahneman did this experiment tens of thousands of times over 50 years. It's a 2-to-1 ratio. It's another way to understand the old saying, a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. Now, how does this apply to our work? What it means is that when you call on a new prospect who's relatively happy with an incumbent, they're the sure thing, and we're the coin toss. And if you've ever heard of a prospect where they say, oh, you have to buy the business there, you have to discount. The reason you have to discount is it's a risk premium to deal with risk aversion, the fact that we like the less risky alternative. So what are we doing about it? So when we call on a prospect and we educate that prospect, we stretch their mind. But it's a little bit like the rubber band effect, right? You could stretch a rubber band, but it snaps back. So we stretch a mind. If we don't deal with risk aversion and skepticism, they don't take the education, we don't close the sale, or we need to discount it substantially. So what do I want? What do we want? We want a WOW toolbox, an accelerator that things we could change right now to deal with these issues, to close more business right now. So the PIK rule is ask for the strongest PIK to which you are entitled. And a great way to end or come to the end of a sales presentation is when you know you're connecting the prospect, don't ask them if they want to go ahead. Ask them, what do you want to do now? And then the prospect will say, can I get a price quote? And then that sets up the trade for the PIK. And then you could say, sure, I'd be glad to do a price quote. Can I ask you to visit my facility, introduce me to the CEO, fill out a credit app, whatever is appropriate. So how do we earn the right? The way we do it is by creating a sense of urgency, or a way to do it. And what I want to now offer you is the breakthrough formula for the urgency. So a compelling reason to do business with proof gets you to a breakthrough move. So what's a compelling reason? Like for an iPhone, we'll have other examples, but for an iPhone, transforms our life, puts a computer in our pocket, all kinds of communication. What's the proving? The reliability and the support. That gets you to what we call a breakthrough move. Breakthrough move, safe to serious, safe to serious. To get it to urgency, we need a time element. The time element is, when do you want it? And the answer is now. I want it now. Now, how do you know if it's safe or serious? Look at the PIK. So if you come out of a sales call and the prospect says to you, I love you, this is fantastic, and you feel good about it, and you come back and maybe you talk to your boss and you say, hey, I had a great sales call today. That's terrific, says your boss. What makes you say so? They love me. They love me. Well, that's a good start. But without a PIK, you could be falling prey to the buyer scam just to get a price out of you. So the WOW toolbox helps convert safe to serious It helps deal with risk aversion and skepticism. Now, the buyer could say to you, I'm good, but the reason that we have a bold vision is that they're on a false peak. It only looks good to them, but we could bring them to a higher place. So one statement we can make to a prospect is, I got it that you're good, but many of our prospects are on a false summit or a false peak. And here's what we do. We help bring you to the higher peak. And then what you need, and you could use an image like this to convey the idea, the picture goes to the brain very quickly. But then what you want to do is you want to do an economic justification to show the value, of what your offer is. And usually you need information to do an economic justification. And that's why you need to do a breakthrough. To get the information that you need to earn the right. So how do we move them to a higher peak? And one key answer is through type 3 knowledge. There are 3 types of knowledge. Type 1 is what you know, type 2 is what you know you don't know, and type 3 is what you don't realize you don't know. And that's what we bring to prospects. We bring them type 3 knowledge, which lifts them to a higher peak. That's how we help them get there. We do this, in doing this, we take the prospect on a journey on the change curve. This material comes from a book called On Death and Dying, and it talks about the grieving cycle, so that all change involves grieving. So the prospect may tell you they're good, they're satisfied with where they are, they're in denial. And then if you give some evidence, they get pissed at you because they're closed-minded. The WOW toolbox, the tools help move the prospect from resistance to exploration. This is our key job in business development, is to move the prospect from resistance to exploration. And that can include getting the first appointment. And the tools in your WOW toolbox can be a way to get that first appointment. Because once they're exploring, we can move them to hope and commitment. Now, testimonials are a fantastic way to overcome risk aversion and skepticism. Pardon me, I got to take a drink. So we're going to look in some detail at the testimonial on the screen. It's for copiers, and it's written by a pastor's secretary at a church. And here's how it goes. I'm going to read it quickly in case you can't see it. Our experience with Atlantic reminds me of the old saying, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and how wrong that can be. We thought we had a great deal with our 2 machines, our 2 copying machines, and a local mom and pop distributor who gave us good service, so we didn't fix it. Then we met you. At first, we weren't very interested as we thought it wasn't broke. Well, you showed us it was broke. Now we have 3 machines doing the work of 2, but saving 25% a year. Plus, we have a color machine. In the past, we only had a black and white machine and a color machine that printed very slowly, and bad quality work wasted money and time. My advice to anyone who's resisting your great offers because they think they're good is talk to Watson. He'll show you how to make it better. Now, this is a classic, valuable testimonial. It gives you 2 things that should be in all powerful testimonials: the before and after story. In this case, we got more value, we saved money. And then the objection the prospect had to overcome, the journey the prospect had to overcome in their mind to move forward. And what the recommendation is, what you should do is make a list of all the big objections that you face, and then find big fans who will write testimonials and write the testimonials for them. It has to be the total truth. You only write things that are true. Let's look at using the WOW toolbox for proving to the skeptic and addressing risk aversion with the team. So what this means is selling is not just for salespeople. We should and could get the entire team involved in the selling process. Operation team members in particular can help develop elements of the WOW toolbox, processes and statistics being examples. So let's look at a concrete 4-step sequence for reducing risk. This is for a manufacturer of roofs. And you'll notice there's a nice, vibrant piece. We have 67 quality checks. Those are our processes. When you have strong processes, you get strong statistics, a very high customer satisfaction ratio. When you have good statistics, you could afford to give a strong guarantee, and these in turn are validated by powerful customer testimonials. So it's processes, yield statistics, yield guarantee, yield customer validation. And it's in the processes and the statistics phase that the whole team can participate and help improve the WOW toolbox. So in this case, here are things that were harvested from the WOW toolbox. Great questions, risk mitigation, testimonials, articles, freebies we could send out, and hard-hitting imagery, strong, iconic metaphors to quickly convey our message. Here, the message was we protect your brand in the marketplace. Here's a case history. Generating a lead using the WOW toolbox. This is a case referred to earlier. It's a case of architects. We're activating a referral source. It's an architectural firm. So the prospect, ABC, needs an architect. My client doesn't know about the need, but someone named John knows ABC, can make an introduction, and we know John. We're introduced to John. So what do we do here? John is a real estate broker. He's our reference source. We told him about our material difference, and he was impressed, but he didn't have an opportunity to refer us at the time. Now, we could have waited for John to call us, but the question is he going to recommend us? In the past, we would have waited. In the past, we went to networking meetings. Maybe we called on allied colleagues in allied fields, and we waited for opportunities. It could take years to activate a referral source. It could take years. But now we're proactive. We use strong messaging. So we send them an article on how we're strong on measuring initial conditions. We send them this smoke jumping piece. We have a fast response team. Hard-hitting messages, memorable, significant. We sent them an article on problems with drywall when you do construction. On 8/4, a month later, we had the introduction, and we were the only ones they talked with. So the key was how we activated the referral source, not only by staying in touch, but by giving them a flow of usable information. That's how we did it. It could happen that fast. We wouldn't have closed this deal if we were waiting for something to happen. It can happen this fast if you're networking and following up with your WOW toolbox. Does it always go this fast? No. But we have a saying, you usually get 0% of the requests you don't make. This case focused attention on what's in your WOW toolbox. And so a takeaway here is you might want to make better use of the tools that you have, or you might need to add to your WOW toolbox. When you do this, when you add to your WOW toolbox and use it, you get great new opportunities and you close because you address skepticism and risk aversion. Now, these and many more ideas are described in the forthcoming book, Innovate Now, ships in March 2019. Now, we all know that Rome wasn't built in a day, and we're almost at the end of our webinar. If you have any questions, by the way, here's where you could send an email, andy@urgencybasedselling.net. But I have one more thought to share with you, introduced by Dave. Dave, as you know, founded Wendy's and famously said, you need to spread the ketchup and other condiments evenly because the last bite of the burger has to be as good as the first bite. Now, what does that mean? When you present, you should end strongly. When you present, you should end strongly, which means if I was following my advice, this last bite of the burger would be as good as I would end strongly. So going back to the WOW toolbox, I want to add one more, the reference check. It's a powerful tool in your WOW toolbox, and I want to show you how to turn it into a strong PIK. So this is the kind of Texas Hold'em story. There was a time in the last 20 years when I really needed to close a sale. It took me a year of sending material from my Wow Toolbox to get an appointment with the prospect. I had two meetings, two 3-hour meetings. The first meeting was with the CEO, entrepreneur owner, COO, and 3 division heads, the heads of 3 companies he owned. They liked what I had to say, so they brought me back the next day. I had another 3-hour meeting with the head of the division, the president of the division, where I would be working if they invited me in. And I had another great meeting. Late that evening, or late that day rather, I got an email from the owner who owned all 5 companies. And the owner wrote in this email, "Andy, we really like what you had to share with us. Could you send us a price quote?" And my belly told me that this guy, he was running the buyer scam. Whatever he said, he would tell me my price was too high. So I went for the reference check PIK because I felt I had earned the right to it. And I wrote back to him, "Hey, I'd be glad to give you a proposal. Could I first ask you to check my references?" And I gave him 10 references. He wrote back to me, "I'll be glad to check your references after I have your proposal if I'm still interested." Now, what would you do if this was your hand? If you were playing this hand, what would you do? Remember the setup. You really need to close the sale. All he wants is a proposal, but you're concerned he's a price shopper and he's going to beat you up. Well, if you were like me, here's what you would have done. You would have written back and said, "I understand you don't have a great sense of urgency right now for what I offer. I know you're a busy guy. Let me tell you why reference checks are important. You need to know, do I play nicely in the sandbox? Am I a team player? What is my energy? Am I a do or die guy? Do I get things done? What is my creativity?" You're not going to know that from a proposal. You can't get that from talking to me. You must talk to references. So if at some point in the future you're satisfied and you want to go forward and you check my references, let me know and then I'll get you a proposal. Well, what do you think happened? Within 15 minutes, they were checking my references. How do I know? People were sending me emails saying, "Hey, Joe called me to check on you. I gave you a clean bill of health." Now, this entrepreneur eventually brought me in to work with 3 of his different companies. A year later, he brought me in to meet another sales team and said, "Andy, tell them what you did to me when we first met." And what he meant is, tell me how I sold strongly. So it's not enough to just have strong tools and make a strong presentation. You also have to teach strongly, which of course leads us to our next webinar in about a month, and you'll get a notice of it. How selling is like Texas Hold'em. Well, for now, we've come to the end of today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, write to me at andy@urgencybasedselling.net and look for my forthcoming book, Innovate Now, 16 Sales Innovation Techniques. Thanks again for visiting us and look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. And again, any questions, write to me at andy@urgencybasedselling.net. Thank you all. I'm going to end the meeting now. Bye.